this webinar being organized by the Institute of Company Secretaries on understanding compliance certificate to be issued by RTA via PCS. Now, this was mandated by two circulars which were issued by SEBI, one following the other, one on 4th November, another on 14th of December. Subsequently, there was one more circular issued by SEBI on 25th January, which is again a landmark circular because a lot of changes have been brought in. Now, all this is a process of converting the physical holding into electronic one. We have two eminent personalities alongside me. First, the president is there, but I would like to introduce the speakers for today's program. We have Mr. B. N. Ramakrishnan, who is our own member, incidentally. He is Chief Compliance Officer at LinkedIn Time India Private Limited. Not only on subsidiary. All this is a process. He has over 3 decades of experience of converting the physical holding. Secretarial, legal, finance, and general administrative functions in various MNC and Indian companies. Been with LinkedIn Times in the last 5 years and as an office bearer of RAIN, Registrars Association of India. He was also involved in various discussions, debates with regulators and other intermediaries while framing some of the policies and the changes there too. Now, that is Mr. Ramakrishnan for you. We also have with us my good friend Radha Shanbag. She is from TSR Darashaw. We know each other for a long period of time. I'm sure the members would know that I was associated with the registry business for a considerable period of time. And since then, I know her for a very long time. She is a senior vice president at TSR Darashaw Consultants Private Limited, a 100% subsidiary of LinkedIn Time India, belonging to the Global Link Group. She has rich and work experience over 3 decades in the RTA domain and has been a witness to entire transformation of the industry from paper to DMAT, now moving in the digital way. As an office bearer of RAIN, Registrars Association of India, she has been involved in various discussions, debates with regulators and other intermediaries while framing some of the policies and changes. Now, that role was also played by me for some time when I was in the RAIN, and I was also the chairman of RAIN for about 5-year period. Anyway, we welcome all of them. And before we proceed on to hearing the speakers, let us first hear our own president, Mr. Devendra Deshpande. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Narsinji, for that introductory welcome speech of yours. I thank Ramakrishnan-ji and Shambhag-ji for accepting our invitation to become the faculty for this particular webinar session. And I also mark the presence of Sandeep Kejriwal-ji, PCS committee chairman of the institute. So basically, when we were discussing internally about holding various programs, I think Narsinji, he heads Financial Services Committee and Sandeep Kejriwal-ji heads Practicing Company Secretary Committee. So both of them have come together and they have decided that whenever there is a new certificate which is coming up, there has to be one process which has to be followed. One, we have to prepare a draft certificate which can be used by a practicing company secretary or a company secretary, and then also do a hand-holding of giving the understanding of that particular certificate to the general members of our institute, so that the certification which is issued or certificate which is issued by the company secretary in practice or normally company secretary should be proper and as per the requirements of the law, and it should be in the same spirit in which it has been brought in. So there are these two committees, Financial Services Committee and Practicing Company Secretary Committee. Both are working on various aspects of new certifications which are coming towards the institute or towards the members, including the bank due diligence, on which there is one task force which is coming and which will be issuing its final draft pretty soon. So we are at a very advanced stage in working on that particular certificate. We are also working on the new certificate under ICDR. So soon we will be coming out with the draft and also one webinar session so that all our members are equipped in giving certain certifications. So I think this is a good start for new certification, new things, so that in future, all the certificates issued by a company secretary kind of similarity would be there in the certifications. Once the draft is finalized, then the checklist can come into picture. We can go for guidance note on certificate on certain certificates. So it's a complete ecosystem which we want to devise on every new recognition which we are getting as company secretaries. So I think this is a first step. A second step, we have already issued the draft of this particular certificate of RTA, and it is available on the website of our institute. And this is the second step of webinar. Soon we will be also coming out with some guidance note or checklist for the benefit of the members. But I think the last date for this certificate is 31st March. We have already given the representation for extending this date, and so that our members can do this certification in a proper manner after following due diligence and give a proper certificate to the registrar and transfer agents. So I think at this point of time, I should stop here, and we would listen to the eminent faculties who have come here for addressing the members and students. Thank you very much. Over to you, Narsimji.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Devendra Deshpande, President ICSI. Yes, before I would ask both Ramakrishnan and Radha to give their presentation. I just want to quickly sensitize our members about two things. There was a circular which was issued on 3rd November 2021, wherein there was certain recognition which was given about the PCS doing certification. But looking at the circular itself, I thought it was done in pretty great haste. And fortunately, we have what is known as the Registrars Association of India, Registrars, that is a RAIN, which intervened, and they had a discussion with SEBI officials, which prompted them to give another circular on 14th December, clarifying some of the issues and making certain changes to make everything possible. So that's how the two things came about. And later on, another circular has been issued by SEBI on 25th of January. That's again a landmark circular. I'm sure the presenters will be touching upon this aspect. All this, if it was basically, it's aimed that wherever the physical shares are there, we need to ensure that it moves into the electronic mode. Sooner or later, it has to happen. Let's hear from both Ramakrishnan and Shanbag on the processes to be followed and the requirements specified by SEBI under the two circulars, and what needs to be done by the PCS to give them the comfort to the regulator that the registrar's work is being done on an even keel. Over to you, Ramki. Over to you, Radha. Both of you, you can take stock from here.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, members, ladies and gentlemen, respected President, Vice President, and Council members of the ICSI. Thank you for inviting myself and my colleague Radha to be the speakers for this particular webinar. Over the next 1 hour, myself and my colleague Radha will try to share with you our understanding and interpretation of the recent circulars issued by SEBI. As you're aware, during the last 3 years, SEBI, with the overall objective of digital era in mind, issued various circulars to enhance ease of dealing in securities market by investors, putting an end to transfer of physical securities, simplifying norms for investors, while at the same time ensuring better governance and compliance by the listed entities and intermediaries, including RTAs. Today, we'll be covering the recent circulars issued by SEBI on November 3, 2021, December 14, 2021, and January 25, 2022, on which we are sure most of you would have already done an in-depth analysis. Slide. Alka, next.
Alka, can you please load the presentation?
Yeah. Next. So, SEBI-wide circulars dated November 3, 2021 and December 14, 2021 brought in common and simplified norms for processing investor service requests by RTAs. SEBI, while introducing this, also brought in standard forms, which is ISR 1, ISR 2, and ISR 3, to be used by the investors and RTAs for updation of PAN and KYC details. And they also introduced ISR 3, which is opting out of nomination if the security holder decides not to nominate any person. So nomination by security holder, either appointing a nominee or opting out of nomination, was made mandatory by SEBI White circulars. As the members would be aware, these circulars are applicable to securities of listed companies held in physical form only. Okay, and the SEBI circular dated January 25, 2022 mandated issue of securities in dematerialized form in case of investor service requests as covered in the circular. We shall be dwelling in detail on these circulars in the subsequent slides. Next. So in the November 3, as per the November 3 circular and the December 14 circular, investors are allowed to submit the documents with self-attestation instead of the earlier requirement of affidavits, attestation, and notarization of documents for all service requests except in the case of transmission requests, which is really a very significant and dynamic change initiated by SEBI in the interest of the investors. SEBI also mandated that RTA shall not insist on indemnity unless the same is specifically provided in the Companies Act or rules thereunder or under the SEBI regulations or circulars. SEBI also introduced Form ISR 1, which is for updation of KYC. RTAs are to update the PAN KYC details of the holder, which should be as provided by the holder in Form ISR 1 only. The SEBI circular also mandates the listed entities are required to directly intimate the security holders about where the KYC details and other information mandated by SEBI are incomplete.
The next slide.
The next, please. The SEBI provided various convenient mode for the holder and the claimant to provide the documents. They can submit it either in person by visiting the office of the RTA, which is an in-person verification, or they can send self-attested copies, hard copies, or they can do with electronic mode also. But wherever the documents are being furnished by electronically, which are necessarily required to have an e-sign. The process of getting the e-sign is already elaborated in the December 14 clarification circular, which is issued by SEBI. Besides this, they have also mandated that RTA shall also use electronic and online interface for processing the queries through emails service portal for speedier processing. Next. Next one covers is basically the mandatory furnishing of PAN, KYC details and nomination. So as per the SEBI circular, effective January 1, 2022, RTAs shall not process any service request received from the physical holders or the claimants till PAN, KYC, signature, nomination details and documents are updated against their accounts and they are completely KYC compliant. While circular dated December 14, 2021, SEBI modified the timelines for implementation, whereby Form SS13, which is the nomination form, or the ISR 3, which is the opting out of the nomination form, to be sent out to the target security holders by the listed entities in two phases. That is, in phase 1 from 1st January 2022 onwards, to the holders of physical securities who are holding it in single name, and in phase 2 from 1st April 22 onwards, where there are joint holders but where there is no nomination already made. In order to meet the above requirement, the companies or through their RTAs have sent out or are in the process of sending individual intimations to the security holders calling for the required details. Some of the companies are enclosing the forms to be completed by the security holders, or they have made a provision for download facility on their websites of the RTA as well as the listed entity. Thank you. I would now request my colleague Radha to take over with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Ramki. Good evening, members, ladies and gentlemen, respected President, Vice President, Council members of ICSI. Thank you, Mr. Narasimhan and Mr. Deshpande. while my colleague has already covered extensively the November 3rd and December 14th circulars, what I will do is I'll try to take you through to what are the subsequent, the Jan 25th circular and the repercussions of not having compliance, etc. Also touching upon the immediate requirement, which is about the PCS certificate, which is to be issued before the 31st of March. Next, Alka. Yeah. So the whole point is there is a repercussion, but the dates are all different. And I know that leads to a little confusion because what has happened is SEBI had started thinking about the effects of this circular and the impact it would have right from last November. So it was expected everything would be out, rolled out, and probably implemented by companies and RTAs right in the beginning, which means by 31st of March, most of the things would have been in place. But with many other things happening side by side, what has happened is I will just first speak about how if there is no, if the KYC details and the mandatory details which have been envisaged by SEBI, if they do not come in, what happens? So first thing is where folios, where the PAN, KYC details, nomination, and all the contact details, if they are not there, by April 1st, 2023, that is next year, then those are supposed to be frozen by the RTA. And the only way that the freeze can be taken off and the folios can again become normal is if the missing details are plugged in, that is either the shareholder or the security holder for a listed thing comes back giving either his CML copy and gives you a consent to pick up information from there for whatever is missing for his account, that is basically PAN, bank details, contact details. He also has to finish either communicating that so-and-so is going to be my nominee or opt out of nomination altogether in case he does not want to nominate. So once he has done all that and the KYC is complete, then the freeze can be taken off. Other reason the freeze can be taken out is if there is a demat. In short, this entire KYC requirement and these circulars apply only till such time the securities are held in physical mode in a folio. The minute it is dematerialized, none of these things apply. So that is one of the things. And then there's a subsequent requirement also, which SEBI has mentioned, which is that all securities, all these frozen folios, they will be referred by the RTA or the listed company under the Benami Transactions Act and or prevention, but it's actually to two authorities if they continue to remain frozen till 31st December 2025. So that's a long way from now, because what SEBI actually expects is most of the compliances will be through, and whichever accounts continue to remain non-compliant as late as end of 2025, that is almost 3 years. Yeah. In such a case, what would happen is that probably there's a big question mark on the actual holders of these securities and whether these accounts are really normal accounts which should be open. So those are the ones which should be referred. May I have the next slide, please? Thanks. The next point was about compulsory linking of PAN and Aadhaar. Now, the disconnect which is there, which I think some people have also been communicating to us earlier, which is, what is the actual date of freeze? Is it 31st, when we say post 31st March 2022? Do you freeze now or do you freeze a year down the line? That is as of 1st April 2023. So the point is, because there is a requirement of seeding Aadhaar and linking Aadhaar, where the dates have got extended multiple times. And as we speak today, the last date is 31st March 2022. So this whole activity was expected to be through by 31st March 2022. Subsequently, if you see, SEBI issued circulars. They have even clarified that, okay, you can do it in 2 stages, etc. Which means by 31st March 2022, you may still have a lot of accounts where the seeding of Aadhaar may not be completed, or in case CBDT extends these dates, then up to whatever date. So till that date, even if you have a PAN which is registered, which looks valid, if Aadhaar is not linked, if the PAN is not linked with Aadhaar, then that validation would still not apply, because what happens is then your PAN is still invalid. So those are things that we have to look forward. I mean, we have to keep our eyes and ears open to see what else comes up. So folios in which PANs are not valid as on notified cutoff date will be frozen. The other point was about listed companies as well as RTAs need to keep all the mandated forms, which my colleague Ramki mentioned some time back. All of these are to be made available on the website for the convenience of all investors. There are a few forms which have also been mandated to be kept by stock exchanges. And SEBI has used all possible channels to bring awareness among people, among companies, among investors on the need to have compliance in place. So the soft copies of these downloadable forms as well as fillable copies of SH13 and ISR 3 are required to be there on the website, which most of the RTAs, I think all of the RTAs have made available by now.
Okay,
next please. On the issuance of securities in DMAT form in case of investor service request. This was a subsequent circular which came on Jan 25th, 2022, which mentioned that there was a whole list of requests. Basically, wherever a person asks for issue of a fresh certificate, which is on account of either an issue of duplicate, whether it is a claim from an unclaimed suspense account, or anywhere where the certificates have to be released post exchange, an endorsement. The places where investors come back saying split my certificates or consolidate my certificates. We are not talking of corporate action. We are talking of these individual requests which come. Similarly, for transmission, name deletion and transposition changing the order, where in the normal course, a transaction would have been processed by the RTA or the company, in case the company is handling it in-house, and a new certificate is to be issued post a transaction, which has to be then released. So instead of, you still have to issue the new certificate, you still have all these entries to go into your register of members, but you will not release the final certificate. You need to, in fact, issue a whole process which came later, that you need to go into a letter of confirmation. There's a timeline fix. There are some 2 reminders. This is only to push all those investors who are in touch with RTAs or companies to move them into DMAT. So this is a very important circular, because what it's trying to do is slowly move everything into DMAT. So no fresh certificate issue which leaves the office of the registrar or the company. Under this very circular, there was an ISR 4 which has been released, which is again a common form where certain documents have to be, in fact, submitted in order that the shareholder can go ahead and complete his process of requesting for it, getting the transaction processed, and also do his KYC. Now, none of these requests which are mentioned here can be processed in physical form with effect from 1st January 2022. This is an important thing because that is the statutory requirement. So no registrar or company is expected to release anything in physical form post this date for any of these requests. There are those timelines of, reminders after 45 days, 90 days, and in 120 days from the date of, the letter of confirmation being issued by the RTA. In case the shareholder does not come back after opening his DMAT account and raising a DRF, then in that case, the registrar or the company is required to definitely transfer these shares into the escrow DMAT account suspense of the company. Next, please. Alka. So, when we talk of the compliance certificate, there was a lot of confusion in the initial stages because none of these aspects had been touched upon. And as Mr. Narasimhan had shared at the beginning of this session, there was too much confusion with the November 3rd circular, which forced SEBI to come out with the 14 December clarification. So the initial circular did mention that within 45 days of the circular, the PCS certificate was required. And none of those things were in place, whereas the effective date for implementing everything was 1st January. So there was a subsequent clarification which came, which said from the effective date of the circular, which means from 1st Jan. Within 90 days of it, the PCS certificate is required to be provided to SEBI by the RTA or the company. By company, again, what we mean is those who are handling it in-house. So this is an RTA requirement. This is not of the listed company. So whoever is handling the RTA function has to provide within 90 days of the circular a PCS certificate, which has to be mailed to SEBI. If we go on to the next screen, we have also reproduced the format because we had asked SEBI, let's have a standard format so that, subsequently there is no other query on this. So this is the standard format which SEBI has shared, where the PCS has to certify that the RTA has carried out whatever were the required changes to implement these two circulars, that's of November 3rd and the subsequent clarification of December 14th. Also to certify that the RTA in question, whoever is being audited, has also made required changes in their procedures, and has some sort of SOP in order to ensure that all the requests are, taken up. And they have, in fact, a modus operandi and a system to take care of whatever new requirements have come up from SEBI. So it's basically to have the KYC in place, basically also to say that no requests, would now happen as per the old route. The new process, whatever is envisaged, is coming in. So that is what the expectation is from the compliance certificate. Next, please. So I think now we have more or less concluded with what is the interpretation and understanding of the circular. Based on our understanding and discussions between various teams, I think we would hand over back to Mr. Narasimhan. Can we get into the question and answer session or whatever you plan next?
Yeah, that's what I plan to do. Okay. Now, just 1 minute. Well, I have a whole lot of questions for you. First is, I think I've also been in this industry for donkey's years. And I think every effort was taken by the company through several measures, enticing the shareholders to move to the electronic board. That was done.
Yeah.
Plenty of circulars were issued, plenty of requests was made. I think every balance sheet would say that please convert your shares into electronic board. That was also there. But some of the investors were not forthcoming to do it. But as a registrar, I know of why people are holding it in physical form. No, they have a right to hold it. But I've seen in some of the meetings, AGMs, where Tempo is brought in and he is giving about 1,000 attendance coupon to the RTA and said, please load my packets into the... I've seen this myself. I'm telling you. I'm not... these are all events which happen not so much in Bombay for your kind information, but in other centers you have it. Now, how are they? Essentially, how do you connive to make about 1,000 folios where you hold in physical form? It will not be possible unless you have some imaginary names, and therefore the difficulty is going to be faced by all these people in getting a KYC done for all these folios. That is the biggest challenge you're going to have. And either they have to forego these shares, and otherwise you know that all this, the responsibility is now on the RTA, because once you hold these shares up and move it to the electronic form or move it into the frozen folios, then you will be pounded with requests, and all those complaints will translate into complaints with SEBI. Now that's a huge challenge. How I'm sure the registrars would have thought about it. What is your plan of action in handling those cases?
Yeah.
Anybody want to take it? I can give a solution to it. Anyway, keep it aside. This is one thing which came to me from a friend of mine. So I thought I will share it with you. We saw that certificate which you had suggested. Now, we had, from our institute side, we prepared a more detailed certificate identifying each one of the activity as to what is required to be done, so that the PCS takes a lot of efforts in identifying the activity and verifies it. if you just say you do this, he will just give the certificate and go away. So that would not be a fair exercise, and obviously he will end up with problem. For some reason, it is not done. Therefore, from our side, I will share that thing with you. I will also try and work it out with the SEBI, that a more acceptable form of certificate identifying various activities which has been undertaken by him needs to be done. What would be your view on that? I have already shared it with Ramki also. I'm sure you have also put it on our website. So what will be your views on that? Ramki, I'm sure you would have gone through it.
Yeah. We have gone through the draft format of the certificate, which SEBI, which Institute has published and put it on the website of Institute also. So as you would have seen that the certificate which SEBI is expecting is a certificate which is to be filed by the RTA with SEBI, and they have given a very standard format which comprises of what are the changes which has been carried out by the RTA, the operating procedures and the systems, whether they have been put in place to ensure that the November 3rd circular and the December 14, 2021 circular are taken care of by the RTAs.
Thanks. So that's a wonderful color.
The role of the RTA is to ensure that the proper systems and procedures are in place to ensure compliance to both these circulars.
Okay, fine. So you mean to say that certificate which is given by SEBI is the certificate given by the RTA to SEBI. What we give to the RTA is on a different plane, where we ensure verification of each one of the activity which is required to be performed by SEBI, by the RTA, right? So ours is a very comprehensive one. You would be fine to take that, it's been given to you. But what you in turn give to SEBI is going to be a simple standard format, which every RTA will give at the end of the certificate, based on the certificate to be given by a PCS. I would suggest that you should also mention the fact that the work has been undertaken by the PCS to SEBI, that by so-and-so PCS has carried this out and given a certificate based on which you are also confirming to SEBI. Would that not be a better practice?
No, let me correct it. The certificate which the PCS is supposed to give to the RTA, okay, that is the standard format which has been prescribed by SEBI. So the so that certificate, the RTA is expected to forward it to SEBI. The certificate which will be provided by the PCS. So the format which was displayed just now by my colleague Radha is the format which has been prescribed. Format has been prescribed. So the PCS is expected and supposed to provide the certificate in that format only, so that the RTA is able to onward submit it to SEBI. So it is not that based on
there's a fairly simple certificate. Anybody and everybody can give a certificate like this because it's just reproduce it. We were very keen that our members, when they do the activity, because ultimate responsibility is also cast on them, that they should do a fair enough exercise to identify the various activities to be done. The website as to whether everything has been uploaded. Take out samples of those activities which has been done to confirm that they are within the norms as laid down by the two circulars. So that's how we thought it should be done. But anyway, we'll have a relook at it. If required, we'll have a chat with SEBI on that. Fair enough.
Mr. Narasimhan?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Radha.
Yeah. Actually, the thing is, even this sending of intimations by companies, okay, subsequent circulars, SEBI modified that to say till 31st March, it is only single holders, who are being targeted, because they are the more crucial one where you need nomination and you need all the other details in place.
Agreed.
Yeah. So they wanted to cut down on that. And the subsequent one was to be taken up from 1st April. Joint. So if you look at it, even a PCS has to issue a certificate. He will not have enough sample size anyway, because his process is just beginning and getting ready. So basically what SEBI is looking at is the intent of RTAs and what sort of systems they are putting in place to ensure that these activities of KYC compilation, updation, and processing of transactions happens from now on. Because they also know it's going to take some time. So it's basically about a system being in place.
Exactly. It is not to say that, okay, because the RTA is servicing so many investors, that you have to draw at least say so many of samples and then to see whether the systems are in place. It is the PCS has to ensure that the RTA has proper systems in place and operating procedures are in place.
And that is why exactly they've kept only 3 months.
Exactly, correct.
This 90 days is also because of that. Otherwise, they would have given some more time.
So can we look at it that this will be for 3 months, but maybe there will be a follow-up certificate also to be issued later on, while when the frozen folios and the transfer happens to maybe.
But that frozen will be probably next year. We don't know.
We don't know, correct.
Okay.
It may not happen just now.
Another question for you.
The cutoff date get extended.
As per para 6.3 of the circular, folios without valid plans as on 31st March or any other date as may be specified by SEBI. This I think rather you clarified in your presentation.
Yeah.
I'll skip that. Okay. Now, I just want to relook at one aspect of it. Obviously, a communication has to go from all the companies, which will be done by the RTA, to the members who are holding it in physical form, seeking the information from the concerned investor to provide. Now, let's say in the case of Link, it may be 1,500 plus companies. In your case, it may be 500 plus companies where the communication has to go. And more specifically, I find for the first time it is mentioned it has to be spent by speed post. There's a specific mention, right? Am I right?
No, there is a
registered post.
No.
There is nothing like that. They have left it open to companies, because of the costs involved.
Correct.
Because this time when they were sending, most companies have also sent the forms along, so that people can fill up. The entire thing itself becomes expensive.
So it is not so expensive. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is always in terms of getting reimbursement. I suppose you would take care of even the sick companies. They have to do it. They don't have a choice. We have typically habitually non-payment companies. I mean, all of us have faced with that before, we continue to face it even today, despite whatever circulars issued by SEBI. They tend to make the payment at their own sweet will. So, how are you tackling that?
So, it always depends on. There is an easier way also. If a company wants to do it on their own, they still need to have at least there's a basic expense. And what SEBI has said is people have to post or have to send, have to dispatch. It is not about speed post or registered post. Why? It could be ordinary, it could be courier, it could be anything. So it's left to companies, but definitely they have to post. So that's how it happens. There is no leeway for that.
Okay.
Even if it's a company which is a sick company, they're expected to do it.
Fair enough. I think they are coming under the SEBI belt, and I'm sure this will be also one of the reasons why a penalty should be imposed by the stock exchange on them as per the LRDR. So suitable changes would be made and direction will be given to the stock exchanges to penalize them as well. The other one was on para 5.2 of the circular specified that securities and frozen folios shall be referred by the RTA listed company to administering authority under the Benami Transaction Prohibition Act and or Prevention of Money Laundering Act. I mean, if it is sufficient, if it is sent only to one, the clarity is there. Any clarity on that, or you have to send it to both of them?
You see, we feel that based on the interpretation, since the administrating authority for both are different and the actions and the punishments are also different under both the acts, it would be advisable to inform both authorities, even though the circular states and or till such time any further notification is issued by SEBI in this regard. Because since both are coming under the different jurisdiction, one is coming under the income tax jurisdiction, the other one is coming under the enforcement directorate. So it would be advisable to send it to both the authorities, both the administrating authorities.
I think the majority of the shareholders holding in physical will be hardly holding one share, two shares. It's very insignificant, correct?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, Mr.
Okay. Right. As per para 6 of the circular, RTA shall be accepting only the valid PAN Aadhaar card with effect from 31st March 22, and the folios in which PANs and are not valid as on 31st shall be frozen. Now, as the RTA is required to provide the compliance certificate from PCS within 90 days of the circular coming into effect, that is on or before 31st March, how the PCS will verify the compliance of this provision? Can we say a system is in place? How to verify this?
So it's basically, won't answer. Yeah. It's basically they have to ensure that the RTA has the proper system in place to capture this, and they are not expected to verify compliance to this provision, which would come into effect post March 31, 2022, or any other date which may be notified by the CBD.
Okay. Now, one more, that 25th January circular. Now, they've said that whenever service request is received, the physical certificate will not be sent. In fact, you would recall there used to be a system called DMAT transfer cum DMAT that was there for a long time in 99 2000 when that process was on, where all the shares which were received used to be held up, a communication used to go. But sooner they in fact relinquished that thought and did it. Now this concept which is there, would it be better if it is also done for any fresh issue? Why public issue they've already taken care of? Why not rights issue? Why not bonus issue? Why not merger acquisition? That way the number of shareholders holding electronic would be substantially increased. What is your thought process on that? How will you suggest the work to SEBI? In fact, I have given my suggestion on this to SEBI long back, but they said that is legally not binding. But with the effort which is being put in by SEBI, I think there's some way they can find out how it can be made legally binding on the investors as well.
From our understanding, a lot of these things might still happen. See, what SEBI is trying to do is plug each point. So they've come up to duplicates in transmission. This transfer come DMAT as a system failed for some reason. But if you see the letter of confirmation, which has been introduced now, is nothing but an extension of letter of confirmation, which they've started for all these November 6 cases, transfers.
Okay.
They saw it works there. Now they've implemented for duplicates and transmission, which are big just now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So probably next thing to be notified like this, because SEBI has been toying with this idea for a long time for bonus and for rights, etc.
Right.
Merger,
where they don't
amalgamation,
want to issue
stock
at all.
split, split,
they
etc.
stopped options, if you remember.
Okay.
Option forms, which used to be sent by companies.
Yeah, that has been stopped. That
stopped some time back, but now this is reverse. Option form would help people go from physical to DMAT. Now this is the reverse. It is like, everyone has to be in DMAT. So that sort of thing, probably we have to wait and see. It may be on the anvil.
No, the compliance certificate under this circular needs to be given by PCS within 90 days of the circular coming to effect. That is on or before 31st March. What about the changes that occur post 31st March? How these compliances will be ensured? How SEBI plans to monitor these compliance after 31st March? Any idea on that?
I don't think SEBI's idea is to use a PCS certificate only for the purpose of monitoring. There may be many other things which would come as we move ahead. As it is, SEBI does a lot of inspections. There are other audits which happen. So the possibility is that this certification has a very restricted view. The only perspective is look at changes, whether they've been carried out in these last 3-4 months, and have RTAs gone and put systems in place. Have you got new operating procedures? Because you cannot release any certificates. That is the main thing which SEBI wants to see. And obviously, all these new changes which are there about freezing or handling anything more, or even looking at Aadhaar seeding, validation of PAN. These are all processes which will keep happening as we go along. Most of these need to wait till 31st March. So this part of it is not covered there.
Okay. The comfort letter from the comfort for the PCS. How will the PCS be reasonable if on inspection it is found that the RTA has not fully implemented the circular in its entirety? How will the PCS be responsible if on inspection he finds it's not been entirely completed? What is the role the PCS has to play? Can he say, no, I refuse to give the certificate?
The PCS obviously cannot issue a certificate if these steps have not been taken, because it was already to be implemented from 1st Jan. So we are already in March.
So the responsibility also on the PCS, right? When he gives a certificate of signature. Because he has taken this assignment, he has to make sure everything is in place before giving the certificate. Otherwise, he will also be held responsible.
Right. That's right.
Okay. What are the key points which should be considered by the PCS while issuing compliance certificate under this circular?
So if you see the SEBI circular, the certification by PCS is restricted to the changes carried out by the RTA, whether the RTA has put the systems in place and whether new operating procedures have been implemented to comply with the provisions of the circular dated November 3, 2021.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's all. That's all the certification envisaged from the PCS is to be carried out. So, yeah.
Good. One other question. what are the important points which a PCS should keep in mind while evaluating or verifying the system operating procedure of an RTA? That is, whether the software is in place for processing investor queries, complaint service requests as per this circular. What is that, the points the PCS should keep in mind? Yes, any of you?
So the view is like whatever the points which have been mentioned in the November 3rd circular and the December 14th clarification, the PCS has to ensure that the changes which are carried out by the RTA and the systems which are put in place and the new operating procedures caters to ensuring compliance with what is required of the RTA to ensure compliance to the November 3rd circular.
Even things like, having the forms up on the website.
Correct.
Are the forms downloadable? Is everything available the way SEBI expects?
ISR 1, 2, 3, 4,
Right,
SH13, SH14.
Correct.
So
downloadable, fillable, etc.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, when a question has just come, what would happen to securities lying in the IEPF suspense account in case no KYC is done? Will it continue to remain in IEPF, or if security frozen, will there be referred under PMLA or Benami? Now, I think I'll rephrase this question. Whatever has gone into IEPF, now in case whenever they want to, when the claim comes, unless they provide all these documents, the shares will not be issued to them. Am I correct in saying this?
Yes, that's right.
So even out of IEPF, although it's not specifically mentioned
through demand.
Yeah, although specifically not mentioned over here, that is taken for granted that it has to happen that way.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, good. Now the question is there any due date by which the information to shareholders regarding updation of the details as per SEBI circulars of 311 has to be sent? What is the date by which they should have sent? I think by now everybody should have sent it, I suppose. Is the client given time that you have to send it by this day, or it has to go? No, automatically it would have gone by now.
You see, most of the companies have done, but still there are some companies who are discussing and they are in the process of sending the notices.
See, for an investor, it does not really matter unless where is it important. The account has to be KYC compliant. The minute he wants to update a change of address, change a bank detail, unless his account is KYC compliant, he just can't do anything.
Nothing will happen.
So it's in his interest to do it quickly.
What's the hit rate for these? What is the kind of hit rate? What is the kind of hit rate for the communication which has gone to the investors? Some percentage, at least 1% or even less than 1%.
I think a lot of companies are still in the process of completing the sending of circulars.
Okay.
And though SEBI mandated, SEBI gave that leeway to companies, saying for sole holders, you can send by 31st March. The rest you can do from 1st April. Most companies have begun the mailing, across.
What if the company has sent forms, first instance of joint account? Will it be required to be sent same again in April? Not required.
No,
they've already sent, it's not required, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We being RTA category 2, we do not provide services to listed company. Do we still require to provide such compliance certificate from PCS? Any category, whether RTA 1 or RTA 2, it has to do, correct? Is there any question or is there any choice?
No.
No, category 1 registrar or category 2 all have to comply with it, right? Because category 2 is essentially only in-house. That is what I mean.
Yeah.
This is compliance for physical folios. So whoever is attending to physical folios needs to take care of it.
A couple of questions, Ramki, you would be able to answer. Company, is it required to place the certificate before board stakeholder committee meeting?
The circular does not specify anything in this regard. So there is no requirement to place it before the stakeholders committee meeting or the board meeting.
But for good order's sake, I think they can place it. There's no harm in doing it.
No, first of all.
Because servicing of investors is the prime responsibility of the company, and therefore they can do it. There's nothing which prohibits, right?
1 minute. Let me complete it. First of all, the certificate is not required to be issued to the listed entity at all. So that being the case, there is no requirement to place it before the SRC or before the board meeting of the listed entity. Because the certificate which will be provided by the PCS will be provided to the RTA and not to the listed entity.
And RTA has to give it to SEBI.
RTA has to give it to SEBI. So there is no question of placing it before the SRC or the board of directors of the listed entity.
Good. Another question is whether the requirement of issuance of compliance certificate will be applicable to debt securities. I don't think it should be, because debts are all issued in electronic form. There is not any debt in physical form. Debt listed companies means it's 100% issued in electronic form, right?
If they have any physical folio, if for any reason there's a single physical folio, then they just need to ensure that that account is KYC compliant.
Okay.
Because there might be a lot of debt issues which would have happened in the past, say 8 years, 10 years back.
Those when the public is involved. See, a debt listed company is purely debt listed on a, to institutional debt. We're not talking about, they are also mandated to get themselves listed. Even if you issue any debt instrument for a listed company, to an institution also, they have to get listed. In that case, whether it will be involved, it may not be, because all of them are, it's not company-wise. It's basically the RTA is handling it. Therefore, RTA will not get involved because all of them are held in electronic mode only. Then another question is, what are the implication or penalty for non-compliance with the circular by the RTA and or by the PCS? The PCS is not getting involved by the RTA. What kind of this thing will be cancelled, suspended, license will be suspended? That's what possible?
We do not know.
We do not know. As of now, the circular does not specify anything about this.
Okay. As per the circular, while processing complaints or service requests, the RTA shall raise all objections in one go. That used to be the complaint, in the good old days, you raise 4 points in one letter, 3 are answered, 1 is left out. So this kind of a problem used to be there, but I think they're plugging it. But of course, it's very guarded when they say that if there's any new document which is sent by the shareholder, by the investor, there can be a query on that. Correct?
Yeah. So the objective of this particular thing is to avoid unnecessary inconvenience to the investors.
Correct.
So at the same time, in the circular there is also a provision that in case of any deficiency or discrepancy in the documents or the details furnished by the holder, then additional information and documents can be requested from the shareholder to comply with the requirements.
One important thing, what precautions should be taken by the PCS while issuing this compliance certificate under this circular? Your thought process on that?
The precautions is almost the same what we mentioned, saying that the systems are to be in place, whether the RTA has put the systems in place, whether the changes are carried out, and whether new operating procedures have been implemented by the RTA to comply with the provisions of the circular.
Okay. Now, there is a little bit of contradiction between para 4.2 and 5.2. I think we'll ignore it because that is clearly understood. When PCS gives certificate, it is based on what is seen by him. He obviously cannot see for all the companies. Would it be a good idea to give certificate company-wise? Maybe for easing work level at RTA, it can be done in a staggered manner. He says you can do it for top 100, top 500. Over a period of time, you cover all the companies. They can be more effective in the implementation of the circular. I mean, that is one suggestion which has come. How do you look at it?
As we already mentioned, this particular certification has to be given to the RTA and not to the listed entity. SEBI is very clear that the PCS has to see the operating systems, whether the changes have been carried out by the RTA, and accordingly issue a certificate to the RTA, and RTA in turn has to give the certificate to SEBI. So there is no requirement under the circular for the PCS to issue a certificate to any of the listed entities which is being served by the RTA.
I agree. The circular does not require. What if the thought process is carried through SEBI on this, where there is a company responsibility is given? Because see, the RTA can do to the extent the company is cooperating with it. Listen, I think we have run through this many a times. Okay, as the RTA are required to update KYC details across all folios, how a PCS can ensure if the RTA has implemented the effective operating procedure to comply with the requirement while providing the compliance certificate?
See, the updation over here is based on authorization given by the investor. Okay, so in which, whether it is ISR 1 or whichever form they're filling up, they are expected, the shareholder is expected to mention the folio numbers. You cannot just pick based on PAN or whatever an update because you don't have the consent of the man. So whether it is a CML or any other update, unless there is an authorized consent which is given by the shareholder, you cannot go ahead. So answering your question, if the shareholder has mentioned multiple folios, I think that can be just like a sample check or something which a PCS can do as part of his check when he's seeing the systems. But the system is not going to on its own pick up all folios and start updating. If it is not mentioned on the ISR 1, there is no way it can be done ahead. Same with ISR 3 or SH 13, unless the shareholder mentions, there is no way on their own an RTA or a company can go ahead and update anything.
Okay. Now, whether the company has to open a suspense escrow demat account, yes. When the occasion arises, he has to open. They have to open, right? Okay. Now, if preferably, this should be different from whatever other escrow accounts they have. Correct. So
for the purpose of reconciliation.
Yeah, under these LODR is there. Then IEPF is there.
IEPF is suspense is there.
So this is an escrow suspense account, which should not be confused with the unclaimed suspense account, which is to be opened under 39.4. Both are different because this is not coming under regulation 39.4.
Correct. Yeah. If letter of confirmation is issued for transmission request and later on this letter comes to the RTA along with ERF, what is the timeline within which the request has to be processed by the RTA? 22 days? 21 days?
Okay. See the
standard 21 days, right? That remains, right?
No. Currently, when the LODR was amended on January 24, 2022, whereby in the LODR amendment, what they have done away with is the physical securities have been removed and the number of days have been made to 7 days. Okay. So based on sessions with SEBI has clearly mentioned saying that the circular provides for 30 days to provide the letter of confirmation. Hence, the entire transmission procedure, including sending the letter of confirmation to the legal heir or the claimant, has to be completed within 30 days from receipt of the complete set of documents.
Okay. And this is again a very strange request. In form ISR 4, it is asking for registration of nominee. However, even if the shareholder gives nomination, then RTA will not be able to change the nomination, giving a overriding effect, which is already registered in the demat account. Thus, do we actually require to take nomination if he's eventually going for demat? Because their question is, in a physical, I give a nomination, but later on when I demat, I already have a demat folio. There, I have already given another nomination. It's not going to override that. That nomination stays. Whatever we have given with the DP stays. Correct?
Yes,
that's right. Where you continue to hold in physical, that is where this nomination comes in. But again, on the nomination, there are some contrasting judgments also given by the courts, where they said nominee is only a holder. He cannot have right to the securities.
Correct.
That is also there on one hand. But the ease of transmitting the securities, once you have nomination, you don't insist on so many other documents which normally is required. Because for transmission, again, restriction is there where SEBI said up to 2 lakhs, you don't insist on any document, you do the transmission. If you are holding in electronic form, it's 5 lakhs. So that is already there. Now, a nominee which comes in here, now, without being very sure that it is going to effectively be his ownership. Because when we try to force the nominee concept now, it is presumed that nominee becomes the owner. It is not the case, at least as per the judgments which are goes.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
He's just a trustee.
Yeah, that's right. What is the recourse available to investor if RTA not updating KYC details through online mode as per SEBI circular and insisting on physical submission of documents?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Can you repeat?
Yeah. It's there in the message which has come. Can you go through it? I'll just have somebody knocking on the door. I'll just join in a minute.
Yeah. Through online mode and insisting on how does non-compliance to be reported.
He said. I think he's coming back. He said that. He said. So far.
You thought it was
initially.
Somebody knocking on the door, nobody's at home, so I have to do it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Answering your question.
Yeah.
What does someone do if an RTA does not update KYC details through online mode as per the SEBI circular, and insist on physical submissions of documents. Now, SEBI circular clearly has said that the documents which are sent through either email or if the RTA is providing the portal facility, then through the website. All such documents, because there's no way you can verify whether these documents are original, whether they're genuine,
Agreed.
or there's no fraud. So they have said, they've spoken about a process called e-sign. The only reason why an RTA may not accept is because the documents are not e-signed. If the documents are e-signed, there is no way an RTA can insist that it has to be now. Yeah, absolutely. That is wrong, totally wrong.
Okay.
So that is something which I think can even get reported to SEBI.
Correct.
But just having a scanned copy attached and sending will not be acceptable.
And the SEBI circular has clearly mentioned how to obtain the e-sign. For the ease of investors, the December 14 clarification, they have clearly given the website where the investor has to go and obtain an e-sign.
Okay. The certificate required from PCS is for each company or a single for all? I think it's clear. It's only to the RTA, it's combined. Yeah. There's nothing in it. Regulation 43 of SEBI LODR is not amended for the change in timelines due to the circulars. Your point of view on the same.
Okay.
43, that is where everything is done within the 30 days, etc.
Exactly. Yeah. We just clarified that. Yeah.
But this supersedes. Obviously, the new one supersedes earlier circular, earlier thing in provision.
Yeah.
Any guideline about disclosure to the PCS and the client company to be made by RTA about compliance is made? Any guideline about the disclosures to the PCS and the client company to be made by a RTA about compliance is made? Whether you need to disclose anything to your client company that you have complied with it, that's possibly the question.
The SEBI circular, both the circular of November 3rd as well as December 14th, has not stipulated anything in this regard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please clarify with that. What will the investors who are holding shares in physical form of a defunct listed company which are no more traded on the exchanges? Poor chap. Keep on to hold on to it. One day you will get sona out of it. Okay. Defunct company, I mean, he's holding on to that. What does he do? Because RTA also is not there. He cannot do anything about it. Nothing.
Yeah.
Which nomination will hold? The one which given to the TP or the one given in the respective RTA of listed company? I think
till such time the shares are held in physical, it will be the one which is with RTA.
For the share which is physical, the one which given to the RTA will hold, or one which is given to.
See, SEBI in its wisdom has also done one thing, looking at the last 2 or 3 years of COVID, and that is why I think a lot of these changes have come in about nomination. That consciously you don't keep a nominee, you say that yes, I'm not doing it. Or you definitely keep a nominee.
The opt-out form concept has come.
Exactly.
Earlier it was never there.
It was never
you give, you don't respond, but people kept on pestering them. Now they say at least opt out, saying that I don't want it.
I don't want it.
That's right.
And he is taking the full responsibility about it.
Yeah. And the day he's filled up and submitted to the RTA becomes a day that the nomination becomes valid, provided it was okay, in case something happens.
Then last question, I think I'll close out and I will ask Sandeep to take charge from here. What is the recourse available to company if the shareholder is not opening the demat account even after 90 days of confirmation letter sent by the sent person? Account is freezed by SEBI. What is the recourse available? Nothing. Gets into a suspense demat account. That's what you said, I suppose.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Maybe he did not hear it out. Okay. I think I have exhausted whatever little questions which I feel I need to ask. Anyway, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the wonderful response which I got from both of you. I now request my colleague in the council, Mr. Sandeep Kejriwal, to take up and have the concluding remarks. And over to you, Sandeep.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My heartfelt thanks to my senior colleague in the council, Mr. P. Narasimhan, my elder brother, my coach, who is also chairman of Financial Services Committee, for his wholehearted support, sir, to organize this webinar. Now I formally propose a vote of thanks to our esteemed speakers of the day, Mr. B.N. Ramakrishnan, who is Chief Compliance Officer of LinkedIn Time, and Madam Radha Sanbag, who is Senior VP of TSR Darasao Consultant Private Limited. for giving us the practical aspect for issuing compliance certificate to RTA in view of the recently SEBI mandate. I am sure our learned friends, our learned participants will of immense benefit for all PCS, which is going to issue the state certificate in coming days. Now, I feel everything is transparent and clear, the content of certificate and understanding thereof. Responsibility of PCS, various timelines, checks, KYC, PAN, everything is now cleared and very transparently responded by both the speakers. I really appreciate the transparent view of both the speakers. Thank you, speaker, for sparing your valuable time and for sharing thoughts.
Thank you, sir.
Now,
you and all of
madam. Thank you very much for your transparent view, madam.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to request the team ICSI to please display the Shahid Ki Beti certificates to both the speakers, Mr. B.N. Ramakrishnan, Chief Compliance Officer, Link in Time, and Madam Radha Sanbag, Senior VP of TSR, Darsaw Consultant Private Limited.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Friends, as President has mentioned in his opening remark, friends, under the guidance of our President C.S. Devendra Deshpande and BP C.S. Manish Gupta, I have planned to hold a series of webinars in the coming days and with the help of my council colleague all the time. Friends, a lot of webinars have been organized in the month of March or later on. The webinar can be considered upon all the recent amendments, upon the recent recognition to company secretaries, or any of the hot topics of the day. We are also planning webinar on the capacity building of the practicing company secretaries in the area of like bank due diligence report, like corporate finance, so that the practicing company secretary can also liaising with the banks and corporate clients in addition to managing procedure compliance. We are also planning to hold webinar on various assistance to non-corporates like partnership firm, NRIs, NBFCs, MSMEs, or like this. Friends, we are also planning for the capacity building of practicing company secretary in the areas of reading financial statements or in the area of various optional audits. Various optional audits can be in the area of corporate social responsibility, can be in the area of corporate governance audit, or related party transaction audit, or NBFC audit, or like this. So we are planning for our best efforts for the best capacity building of our practicing company secretaries, and request all of you, my friends, if you have any suggestions for your capacity building or like this, so please come forward to us and support ICSI for the better development of practicing company secretaries. Thank you very much. Thank you, speakers, once again. Thank you, Mr. P. Narasimhan, my senior,
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.